Hi, thank you again for joining us today. I'm Jennifer Mefford. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Partnerships at the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation Clinical Trial Innovation Webinar Series. This series highlights cutting-edge research happening across the U.S. in both pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung diseases. From new therapies to insights drawn from real-world patient registries, these studies, they offer real hope for patients and their families. The research opportunities shared today are actively recruiting participants, and this is a great chance to learn more about those trials. A recording of today's webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel, and that usually will be up there for about 90 days, so make sure you go back and take a look. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. This is a Zoom platform. For those of you who are familiar with it, you are in attendee listening mode only, which means you will be on mute, everyone except for the presenters. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar with a functional icon. A few of those may be helpful. I'll call a few of them out just so you're aware. The Q&A button, you can use this if you're having any technical issues. We do have staff who are online and able to walk you through anything that you may be needing to troubleshoot. And we also have closed captioning available on this platform. There's a button labeled below CC, so if you select that, that will turn on a script, so you can also read along if you'd like. The raise hand feature and the chat button that you might see are going to be turned off for the remainder of this presentation. Additionally, I've collected some questions that were submitted ahead of time that I'll be asking our presenters at the conclusion of each of their talks. If you have additional questions about any of these studies, please take a look out on the presentations. Everyone has included contact information about their studies. I'm also going to share that contact information in the chat section here of the meeting. And then the last thing I want to mention is a disclaimer that, as a reminder, this webinar, it's for informational and educational purposes and not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your personal physician or healthcare provider if you have any questions about your healthcare. Great. And with that, I want to introduce our first speaker. We're joined here by Jimmy Nolin, Senior Clinical Science Liaison at Vicore Pharma, who will be speaking about the ASPIRE trial of Buloxibutid in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Vicore is an innovative clinical stage Swedish pharmaceutical company unlocking the potential of a new class of drugs with disease-modifying potential. And with that, Jimmy, I'll hand it over to you to get started.
All right, thanks, Jen. First of all, I want to thank the PFF and the organizers for giving us this opportunity to talk about our trial today. The PFF and other patient organizations are crucial to making sure these trials are run successfully, and first and foremost, patients and their caregivers are really the most important part of this. So thank you everybody for attending today. And with that, I will get started. So some rationale behind this and this study, and a little bit about today's agenda. So we all know idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, is a disease with a significant unmet medical need. So we're really excited about buloxibutid's novel mechanism. We believe it is potentially blocking the fibrosis and activating internal repair pathways in the lung. We saw unprecedented lung stabilization and improvement and excellent gastrointestinal tolerability in our open label phase 2A AIR trial that was over 36 weeks. And this ASPIRE trial, which we'll be talking about in depth today, is a phase 2B trial that's designed to confirm the effective dose of buloxibutid in IPF and also to confirm its safety. So the airways are really the main driver in this disease. So you need a healthy airway here to promote this homeostatic lung function, or this proper lung function. And there's really two major cell types that are involved in these airways. These long, flat, kind of egg-shaped cells, these alveolar epithelial cell 1s, or these AEC1s, as I'll call them, are really important for this gas exchange. And the other cell type, these AEC2s, are really important for replacing damaged cells, differentiating into these long, flat AEC1 cells to promote this gas exchange, and also promote proper airway function by secreting these surfactants, which are these compounds that help keep the airways open and maintain the integrity of these airways. And as you'll see on these AEC2s, we also have these Y-shaped little blue protrusions. These are representations of the angiotensin 2 type 2 receptor, or AT2R. We love our abbreviations here. That is the receptor that binds to the buloxibutid and drives these downstream signals that we believe are improving lung function in the system. Okay. Let's go here. Now we can look at just the juxtaposition of an IPF lung and a healthy lung here. So this is what we believe is really the consensus in the field, is what's going on in the lung in IPF. So we have these cells that are dysfunctional. So we don't have that surfactant being produced. We don't have repair of cells, and we don't have that proper gas exchange. So you can imagine a lot of these signaling pathways, or a lot of this normal function has gone awry. So we have these dysfunctional cells that lead to an increased release of these signals that drive fibrosis. One of the most common here shown is TGF-beta1, or transforming growth factor beta-1. That's kind of the hallmark signature signal that drives fibrosis that we think about in the field. And ultimately what this leads to is a fibrotic lung tissue that is this scarring. Whether it's a scar on your arm or a scar on your lung, that collagen is really what drives and really makes that scar. You can see this bundle of collagen here down at the bottom of the slide. Now, on the flip side of that, this is how we believe buloxibutid is working in these lungs to repair these cells and hopefully stabilize or potentially even improve the lung function of these patients. So when buloxibutid is given, it binds to these receptors, again, these blue protrusions on these epithelial cells that we can see here, activates these cells and turns on, which I won't get into the nitty-gritty details, but turns on this internal repair mechanism that exists within these cells. It inhibits the release of a lot of these signals that drive fibrosis, including TGF-beta1, decreases the expression of that, decreases the level of collagen, which is ultimately that fibrosis, that scar tissue, and improves gas exchange by allowing these AEC1s that we talked about in the previous slide to be replenished to drive that gas exchange, and ultimately leading to stabilization of lung function. And ideally, ultimately, our major goal is really lung function improvement. So this is some of the data from that phase 2A AIR trial. Again, this was an open label trial. I like to start off with that. And what that means, again, is that there was no placebo group. We wanted to look at this trial in patients not on background therapy and really get a good idea of what buloxibutid is doing, get a really good idea of the safety. But unfortunately, without a placebo arm, we can't fully interpret this data and say that, yes, it is actually improving lung function. But what we can say is, compared to this dashed line, which is the untreated group taken from previous IPF studies, this is what the placebo group would look like in terms of lung function decline over this 36 weeks, how we'd expect these patients not on any therapy to behave over this time point, versus what we had seen in this study with the green bar looking at buloxibutid over 36 weeks. Now, we're really excited about this. This really gives us a lot of motivation to go forward with our next trial. And that's why this Aspire phase 2B trial is being conducted, is to really confirm this data, confirm the safety in a setting that is controlled with a placebo group, so we can really make some firm conclusions. I like to also mention that buloxibutid showed really good gastrointestinal tolerability, which we were really excited about. And if we can reproduce this in a placebo-controlled trial, we would be really excited to move forward with this into phase 3. So some of the common adverse events or side effects seen in this phase 2A trial were listed here: hair loss, some rash, cough, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or some heartburn, and some others here: blood creatinine increased, and pyrexia or fever. Now, this hair loss is deemed to be more mild to moderate hair thinning, and some of these patients actually experienced regrowth of that hair during the trial while still on drug. So we're working in the background right now to understand what the mechanism is that's driving this and how we can address this going forward. And we hope to have some more data in the future, and we'll share that as soon as we can. So moving on now to the Aspire IPF trial, which is currently enrolling. This is a phase 2b dose-finding trial for people with IPF or idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And we're conducting this study to really evaluate the impact of buloxibutid on lung function, safety, and ultimately quality of life. So it's really truly a global study. We're looking at sites, or we have sites open in 14 countries. I think we've added some more sites here now, so we're over 100 sites globally. The vast majority or the plurality are in the US. There'll be some more information at the end of this presentation if you'd like to access our website and access some more information about this trial. I will keep that up. So what to expect? So this is a study where we're looking at 270 subjects is our target here with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and they will be randomized equally between these three groups shown in the green and blue bars. So buloxibutid, our active drug, 50 milligrams twice daily, 100 milligrams twice daily, and a placebo twice daily. And we're targeting 90 patients in each of these groups. You'll see there's about a 6-week screening period, and at the beginning of the trial and at the end of the trial, a 2 to 4 week follow-up period. But I'd like to draw your attention to the actual 52-week trial period where we only have 6 in-person site visits during this treatment period, and this is to assess efficacy, safety, and PK. And the reason we designed this trial as such is we solicited feedback from patients and caregivers and patient organizations to make this study as patient-friendly and as minimally burdensome as possible. And this is a lot of the feedback we got is there's always too many site visits. How can we make this better? So we're designing this trial to hopefully be more patient-friendly. And we're also soliciting feedback from patients throughout the trial with blinded interviews to understand if we're actually doing a good job with that. So we really make this as patient-centric and as patient-focused as possible. So in between those in-person visits, you'll also see at the bottom of the screen, there are 8 remote visits. So these can be done by phone or video. And this is, again, to assess safety and compliance. And it's important to note that these remote visits can also be turned into in-person visits if your study physician or if you feel like you need to be seen in person. So what else to expect? So 2/3 of patients, as we noted in the previous clinical trial design slide, 2/3 of patients will be on trial drug in either 50 milligrams twice daily or 100 milligrams twice daily. And I should also mention that 100 milligrams twice daily is what we had studied in our previous AIR trial. The 50 milligrams twice daily is a new lower dose that we anticipate will have the same benefits as the 100 milligram dose, but hopefully will mitigate some of the side effects that we had seen in our earlier trial. Does 52 weeks of treatment, and participation includes all trial examinations, tests, and treatments. Reasonable travel and meal expenses will be covered that are related to clinic visits. And again, there's no cost to patients for these clinical trials. So some of the main inclusion criteria for this study, pretty standard, but patients at least 40 years old with a confirmed diagnosis of IPF within 7 years. And some of these inclusion criteria were recently adjusted to encourage more recruitment and to relax some of these criteria to drive recruitment for patients. Current treatment, patients can either be on a stable dose of nintedanib or not currently on any background therapy. Unfortunately, pirfenidone is not allowed as a background therapy in this study. Patients should have an FVC of at least 50% predicted and a DLCO, diffusing lung capacity of carbon monoxide, of at least 30% predicted. Not on any restricted medications, and this would be discussed with your study physician during your screening visit, and also no severe liver or kidney disease. So that is it for the information here. It was really brief, but hopefully we've covered the basics here. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit this site at aspire-ipf.com. Feel free to send us an email at info@aspire-ipf.com. Visit our clinicaltrials.gov site, which I understand is not totally user-friendly, but our website's much nicer to look at. So please feel free to visit that. This QR code will also bring you right to that website where you can get some more information about sites that are currently recruiting and other information about Buloxibutid and our program and our leadership as well. So thank you all for listening. And yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jimmy. And if for any reason you weren't able to capture that information, we're also going to drop it in the chat box so you can grab it from there as well. All right, I have a couple questions that I've pulled together for you. Thanks for sharing, the side effects profile. It's really helpful to know heading into the trial. If the hair loss piece that was at the top, if someone were to experience hair loss in the study, could the dosage of the study drug be lowered to reduce the effects, or would you need to stop the study altogether if hair loss was a concern?
So since it's blinded, we don't necessarily know which dose patients would be on. If that's the case, there may be need for unblinding, but there is an opportunity to pause drug administration for up to 4 weeks for any reason, whether that's to take restrictive medications or to manage side effects. So there is up to a 4-week pause period that patients can take advantage of here.
Oh, great. That's good to know.
Yeah, but if it's severe, I mean, we can always talk to the physicians and medical monitors to see where else we need to go.
Great. You mentioned background therapy that was allowed during the trial. What if a person were to start the study and they were not on a background therapy treatment, but later decided to start one, such as one of the antifibrotics, would they need to withdraw for the study, or would this be allowed?
So patients can start nintedanib during this trial up to the physician's discretion. That's totally fine. Nintedanib is allowed as a background therapy. Unfortunately, if a patient needs to be on pirfenidone, they would need to withdraw, as that is not allowed in the study.
And is there a certain period of time if they were to not be on pirfenidone? Is there a certain period of time before they would then be allowed to be in the study?
Yes, there is. If they were on, you're asking if they were on pirfenidone and then maybe stopped?
Correct.
Yes, there is a washout period where patients can stop pirfenidone for whatever reason, either not tolerating or anything, and then they can, after that amount of time, they can then enter in the study.
Okay, great. Thanks for
Yep.
that. Does Vicore have any plans for an open label study extension to this study?
At the moment, there are not any plans, and I think that has a lot to do with it. This is still a dose finding trial, so we're still looking at 2 different doses of Buloxibutid to determine which to bring into our phase 3. So at the moment, there is not a plan to do an open label study. So yeah,
Thanks for that clarification.
of course.
And then does Vicore have plans to study Buloxibutid in non-IPF pulmonary fibrosis in the future?
Well, that's a good question. That's the next logical step, isn't it? So as of right now, we are focused on IPF. We're a small company of less than 40 people, so we're kind of laser focused on getting this study done and driving up to the phase 3. I think it makes sense that we would potentially go into any non-IPF ILD, but as of right now, just IPF. But yeah, I think that really also depends on what we see for efficacy and safety in this study, where the data would take us and where we might go next.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, appreciate your review of the study. And again, we'll share some more information out for those that want to follow up to learn more.
Right.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm going to move on to the next presentation, which is Thomas Porter, Director Clinical Development Lead at Boehringer Ingelheim. So this presentation will talk about a trial evaluating BI 1839100 for cough reduction in IPF and PPF. Yeah, unfortunately, Thomas isn't able to be here today, so he has recorded a 6-minute presentation for today's webinar. So please enjoy the presentation, and then we'll follow up as well with contact information for the study if you'd like to learn more.
Hi, I'd like to start off by thanking the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation for this opportunity to present today. We greatly appreciate the Foundation's involvement and support in the lives of patients, caregivers, family members, and healthcare providers. My name is Thomas Porter, and I'm the Clinical Development Director for Pulmonary Fibrosis at Boehringer Ingelheim Pharmaceuticals in the United States. Today I'm going to be presenting some study design details for our Phase 2A/B study testing our investigational BI 1839-100 compound, which is being evaluated for cough in people with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis or progressive pulmonary fibrosis. BI 1839-100 is an investigational agent and has not been approved for use. The safety and efficacy of this investigational compound has not been established. This presentation is meant to raise awareness about this study as it is actively enrolling in the United States. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, is a type of progressive pulmonary fibrosis. It is a fibrosing interstitial lung disease characterized by decline in lung function with a poor prognosis, as patients with IPF typically survive 2 to 5 years after diagnosis. Boehringer Ingelheim has remained committed to researching IPF and progressive pulmonary fibrosis, given the continued unmet medical need. The impact of IPF extends beyond physical symptoms. Patients with IPF or progressive pulmonary fibrosis, especially those with chronic cough, report a lower quality of life, higher rates of depression, and increased loss of workplace productivity. Additionally, a worse cough-specific quality of life score has been associated with a higher risk of death and respiratory-related hospitalization. There are currently no approved treatments specifically for people with IPF or progressive pulmonary fibrosis with chronic coughing. The compound in our study, BI 1839-100, is under investigation for the treatment of these patients. BI 1839-100 is being investigated for its potential to mitigate lung microinjuries caused by coughing. The Phase 2A study is active, ongoing, and currently enrolling patients with IPF. We intend to open the study to people with progressive pulmonary fibrosis later this year. Selected key eligibility criteria are highlighted on this slide, but this is not the entire list of criteria to enroll in the study. The study aims to enroll 180 participants in the IPF group and 50 participants in the progressive pulmonary fibrosis group. To be eligible for the study, individuals must be diagnosed with IPF or progressive pulmonary fibrosis, as well as other clinical considerations. Individuals must also have a chronic cough of clinical significance as assessed by the visual analog scale. They may be on an antifibrotic therapy as long as they have been stable on it for at least 12 weeks and they plan to stay on treatment even after randomization. Individuals who are not on antifibrotic treatment are eligible if they do not plan to start or restart it during the trial. We've designed a study so that our main primary endpoint is to measure if the study drug is able to reduce cough frequency. In this study, we will measure the rate of lung function decline, but we will also compare the effect of BI 1839-100 to a placebo in reducing the frequency of coughing. The main goal is to see if there's a significant decrease in the average number of coughs per hour after 4 weeks of treatment. Additionally, we're also looking at whether there's a change in how participants rate their cough after 4 weeks. Since the study takes place over multiple weeks, we will also be looking at other measurements at different time points to evaluate the effect over time. The Phase 2B study is planned to begin after an analysis of the data from our Phase 2A study. Here, we will continue enrolling IPF participants and are looking to better understand how different dosages of BI 1839-100 might affect the frequency of coughing. We will also enroll individuals with progressive pulmonary fibrosis in the Phase 2B study, although this is more of an exploratory arm where we hope to gather as much data as we can to better understand how these participants might respond to BI 1839-100. This graphic represents the design of the trial for participants with IPF with the visit schedule and time window across the bottom. All participants enrolled in this trial will undergo a screening procedure at their first visit to the clinical site where their health and eligibility for study inclusion are appropriately assessed. After confirming eligibility, participants will be randomized into either the treatment arm or the placebo arm. More participants will receive active treatment compared to placebo. Participants in the active group will take a high dose or medium dose of BI 1839-100 by mouth twice a day, or they will take a low dose of BI 1839-100 by mouth once a day. All dosages will be taken for 12 weeks. Participants in the placebo arm will take a matching placebo or sugar pill by mouth for 12 weeks. Similarly, here's a graphic representing the design of the trial for participants with progressive pulmonary fibrosis, with the visit schedule and time window across the bottom. Of note, this study enrollment period is shorter than it is for participants with IPF. All progressive pulmonary fibrosis participants enrolled in this trial will undergo a screening procedure at their first visit to the clinical site where their health and eligibility for study inclusion are appropriately assessed. After confirming eligibility, participants will be randomized into either the treatment arm or the placebo arm. An equal number of participants will receive treatment and placebo. Participants in the active group will take a high dose of BI 1839-100 by mouth twice a day, while participants in the placebo arm will take a matching placebo or sugar pill by mouth. All doses will be taken for 4 weeks. Here we've shown a map of the locations of our enrolling clinical study sites across the United States. If you're interested in this study and would like to connect with a study doctor for more information, contact information for these participating sites can be found on clinicaltrials.gov. Thank you for your time today. For more information, please visit clinicaltrials.gov, mystudywindow.com, or contact Boehringer Ingelheim's medical and technical information line at 1-800-542-6257. Thanks again.
Great. Well, thanks to Thomas Porter. I know there was some static at the beginning of the video. When we post this on YouTube, we'll go back and ensure that it's clear. So if there was anything you missed, be sure to see that when it gets posted on our YouTube channel. We want to make sure you get all the content. Great. And I want to welcome our third speaker today, Jessica Shore. She is Senior Vice President of Clinical Affairs and Quality at the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. And Jessica's here to talk about the Pulmonary Fibrosis Community Registry.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm really excited to share information about the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation's Community Registry. It's a little bit different than the clinical trials that we just heard about earlier in today's webinar. And so I'm going to give first off to start by describing what is a registry. Many times we understand what a clinical trial is and testing either a therapeutic or a new medication or device, but what does a registry do? Well, a registry collects and tracks information about health status of patients and the care they receive. Our registry, that I'll share more information on, also collects information on caregivers, family members, and others who contribute to the care and the outcomes of patients. And very importantly, unlike a clinical trial that dictates how and when a medication or medication in development or in development is being tried and tested out, we actually are in a registry understanding how things are going to be doing in real world, which means the registry does not prescribe what should be done or require additional medications or visits. It follows along folks just as they're receiving care. A registry simply captures real-world data to help researchers learn about actual care patterns, observe subjects, and measure and improve the quality of care. Some examples of registries that exist that you might have heard is the Nurses Health Study. This is a study that's been going on since 1976 that collects information on nurses and what their health is, their health outcomes. Another is a brain health study. It collects information, and this actually has millions of participants in it, where it actually collects information on patients' brain health and trying to determine how the real world is happening for those patients impacted by brain ailments. And so when we think about the PFF Community Registry, we want to better understand specifically pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung disease. And so the PFF, as a nonprofit in the space, launched the Community Registry in July 2022. And was really for us at the PFF to help facilitate increased participation in research and also develop a wider pool of participants for bidirectional communication. Now, you might wonder, what does bidirectional communication mean? Well, many times registries are just collecting data from participants, patients, family members, caregivers, and the data is just going to the researchers. Here in the community registry, we actually developed it to be bidirectional, meaning that the PFF, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, myself and colleagues and other researchers are able to also send you information if you're a participant in the registry. And so that bidirectional communication is ability to share more information with each other around new research updates, updates on what opportunities might be available for you as a family member caring for someone living with pulmonary fibrosis. And currently, the PFF Community Registry is ongoing, and that means that we are collecting information and data provided by patients who are living with an interstitial lung disease or pulmonary fibrosis, caregivers, and also family members. Participants to be in the PFF Community Registry need to be 18 years or older and reside in the United States. And data is provided through a secure, easy-to-use online portal about every 6 months, and it takes about 2 hours per year. And so the investment time for participants is fairly low. However, it gives such a wealth of information to the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation to help disseminate to researchers. At the very beginning, participants are asked to enroll, and that enrollment survey is what would take the most time. That is giving us kind of a snapshot of who you are and the history you have living with pulmonary fibrosis or caring for a family member or spouse with pulmonary fibrosis. And then about every 6 months, those follow-up surveys are sent out to you via email. And those follow-up surveys typically go a little bit quicker than the enrollment survey. So if you're someone who's listening to me today and considering enrolling and you do those enrollment surveys and you say, this is a lot of work, we understand. And that's why the follow-up surveys were developed with much more ease of saying, have things changed? So you're not adding all of the same information again, but actually being able to tell us, is there new updates or not? And if there isn't, the time that you're spent collecting or filling out your surveys and sharing your data is less. There's also optional sub-studies that are available or information that'll be sent out to you that you would be able to participate in further information sharing information for studies such as surveys or other opportunities such as clinical trials that we think you might be fit for and you should discuss with your providers. Now, this all seems fairly less time intensive than a clinical trial and some of the other research studies some of you may or may not have participated in, but you're probably really interested in what type of data is collected. And patients, family members, and caregivers share demographics. So that's your age, where in the United States you live, what type of diagnosis are you living with, or is the family member that you're connected with have? What type of medical history and medications do you have experience with? Family history. Family history is very important because we want to really better understand the impact of familial pulmonary fibrosis. And that is an evolving area of science right now. And we want to be able to reach out to family members to give them updates around familial pulmonary fibrosis and potential opportunities to continue to participate in studies. Additionally, surveys on your current health status are sent out, particularly if you're a patient. And these are sometimes referenced as patient-reported outcomes. And so these are surveys that have been developed specifically to query and better understand the experience of living with pulmonary fibrosis. Or if you're a caregiver, better understand what stressors might exist for you currently as you're caring for someone with a chronic serious disease. Back to that bidirectional communication. Participants also receive emails and newsletters from the PFF. These emails help to remind you when to collect, when we'll need to collect more information. So when is your surveys due? And we have e-newsletters that are sent to your email to provide updates. Again, updates on what types of research studies may have been presented at a past conference, what new information at the PFF may be beneficial for you to know. And so this newsletter allows us to share information back and forth with you. Again, a very important part of that bidirectional communication is that we don't want participants to only be providing data to us, but for the PFF to also share back lessons learned, new research studies, and happenings at the PFF. So I'm really happy to provide an update of where we currently are with enrollment. And again, this is open to all of you impacted by pulmonary fibrosis right now. And you can join the nearly 2,600 participants that are already actively enrolled in the community registry. It's really important that we have great representation across the United States and understand how care may be different across geographical differences. All 50 states are represented. We have over 300 participants that report being a veteran. That's really important for us to understand who are the patients that are enrolled in the community registry and what is their experiences. Currently, we have 73% of the patients are living with IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It's really important for us to continue to want to expand the registry so that we have a better understanding of the type of experiences all types of interstitial lung disease patients are living with. I wanted to just share a little bit more on how your data, when you share it with the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation through the community registry, is used and the value that is so important for us and the community. First off, independent research studies may reach out to participants based on a high-level inclusion-exclusion criteria. So maybe a researcher is looking for folks living with pulmonary fibrosis, specifically, let's say, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. We can query our data set at the PFF and understand who's in the registry and be able to share out information specific that's relevant to participants about ongoing trials that might be an opportunity. Also, what's really important with the community registry is that we're collecting beyond just the patients living with pulmonary fibrosis. We want to really understand the breadth of the impact of the disease. So caregivers and families are enrolled. We believe this is the first type of registry collecting all of this experience in one place. And we think it's really important to share that out, and how that would be shared is through researchers who are interested in the different types of data collected on caregivers and family members, and be able to understand what are the stressors associated with caring for someone living with pulmonary fibrosis. Specifically, the opportunities to enroll in more research studies is important. We know the registry does not have an intervention. We are not testing a specific drug or a specific type of let's say oxygen, supplemental oxygen device. We are just collecting the data and its observational nature. However, given the high level data that you share with us, we may be able to connect you with a study that is testing an intervention. And so that'll be something that's an important part of the community registry. And when you consent to be part of the community registry, you consent to allow us to, yes or no, send you information on different studies that are available. The Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has advocacy efforts that we think are really important to our community, such as oxygen reform. And specific to supplemental oxygen use, we've utilized some of the data that we've captured in the community registry, just aggregate kind of summary data, as this chart shows, of how many of the patients living with pulmonary fibrosis are on oxygen at home all the time, while at rest, while sleeping, or while maybe they're exercising. This is really helpful for us, and to think about folks that in our community registry, over 40% who are patients are using oxygen all the time. That's really important for us to know, and to be able to share that information with our with Congress and our elected officials of why is supplemental oxygen reform so important. So these are just some of the examples of what we do with the data and how your data, if you join the community registry, contributes. And this is something that continues. If a researcher has an idea that is new, they can submit it to the PFF, and we can actually review it and determine if we have the right data and move forward with that project. That's another important part about registries to note, is that we collect that baseline information, but it also can then help inform researchers of what types of additional questions should be asked. So this is the ask for you, is to join the community registry. We really need a robust and wide range of participants that really share the larger, clear picture of pulmonary fibrosis to researchers. If we don't have participants representing every type of diagnosis of those folks who are in interstitial lung disease community, it's really challenging for us to be able to continue to develop research around those diagnoses. You as a family member or a caregiver also really has a wide range of experiences that you're experiencing with caring or experiencing alongside your loved one. And we need to know that so that we can better advocate, better understand how patients should be cared for. How can we better support families living through the same experience you are? And so here's information on how to join. Again, it's just 2 online surveys a year. There is a QR code, and in my next slide, we'll show you information, additional ways that you can get a hold of us. But again, the community registry needs all the voices, all the experiences to just continue to make it even that much richer in understanding the true impact of pulmonary fibrosis. If you're interested in joining the community registry, which I hope you are, you can visit pffregistry.org or email us, and we're live folks. Sometimes I answer these questions or my team at registry@pulmonaryfibrosis.org. So you're going to get a real person on that email, and we're happy to help you and support you through any types of questions you have as you navigate the enrollment surveys. Thanks again for your time.
Terrific. Thanks, Jessica. I think it's really helpful to talk about what actually is a registry and how the different ways that that data is used that can inform future research, care of patients, family support, advocacy, not just, treatment development. So that leads to my first question. You mentioned several times about family members being allowed to participate in this registry. Can you share a little bit about how data collected on family or caregivers might be used?
Sure. I'll start with caregivers. In particular, caregivers, we know that there is a lot of information out there, let's say in pediatrics or children who have chronic disease, and a parent may have to take care of that patient or their child who has living with a chronic disease. We have a good understanding of the stress and the support that could be helpful to those families. Currently, we have limited understanding of how best to support caregivers and family members when one of their loved ones is diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. And so we're collecting long-term data now on different types of stressors that exist, currently in a caregiver's life. And that'll help us inform, and we're in the process of doing this, better understand what are those stressors, and then long-term, how can we support you better when you're going through this experience? So it's a real example of how we're, making the change and how we're learning more information and how we can improve families' experiences with pulmonary fibrosis. I also want to just talk a minute about families. Many folks have heard of familial pulmonary fibrosis, and pulmonary fibrosis, we know there's a lot of folks that are diagnosed and we don't know why, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. We know that there's some families that exist, though, that there's clusters or there's many individuals in a family that are impacted. And this continues to be an evolving science of understanding the genetics and how this actually is happening to families. And what is the genetic background? We know that many folks who are tested who have these family disease may not have the known mutations that could lead to pulmonary fibrosis. So as we continue to partner with researchers who are really experts in familial pulmonary fibrosis and geneticists, this allows us opportunities to share that information out with all of you who are experiencing this, and also then ask you to participate in research specific to familial pulmonary fibrosis.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful, those examples. My next question is around just registries. It's something that's been in the news a lot lately, different registries, and something that has come up in a few talks that I've been in the last couple of weeks is data protection. So how is a participant's information protected once it's collected in a registry?
Yeah, great. I touched on that we use a secure database when you enter in your data, that's secured, very much like your medical records. But I think an important thing to remember is the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation is the sponsor. We're the ones managing the registry per se. We own the actual study, and we're able to have safeguards in place to make sure that those who should not have access to the data do not. But I think one of the other important things to remember is that all of the data you share or information you share is confidential, and you're not individually identifiable when we partner with researchers who are utilizing your data. In addition, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has committees set up and developed who are comprised of experts in pulmonary fibrosis, researchers, and others who review the research studies that are asking or proposing to use the data in the registry. And so we have very tight guardrails around how that data is shared, along with making sure that the data we have is appropriate and can answer those questions. So it's all the way from when you enter your data, it's kept secure, it's kept confidential, and then we're making sure that researchers are able to actually get to answer a question that's really relevant for the data that's in the registry.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing some more details on that. Speaking of data entry, you mentioned that there's 2 surveys each year that are collected. What if there's a question that someone just doesn't want to answer for whatever reason? Would that disqualify them from participating, or are they able to skip and move on?
Yeah, great question. So when you first do your enrollment CRF, the very first thing that you'll go to is actually part of an informed consent. Things that are related to informed consents have to be answered. So that's just saying that you're agreeing to participate in the trial, and that we're confirming that you are in the cohort or those of interest that we want to enroll. So that would be a patient living with pulmonary fibrosis, along with actually lung transplant recipients because of pulmonary fibrosis or interstitial lung disease, family member or caregiver. Those are questions we need answered. But as you get through the data, specific about yourself, those are things that you can skip. We would love to have complete data sets, but if there's a specific question that you're not comfortable answering, you can skip it. And I think that's a little different. Registry, we have a little bit. This is real world. And so if you're not comfortable, you don't want to disclose a response specific to a question, that's okay. Again, we only use it for research purposes, but if you're uncomfortable with a particular question, it's okay to skip it.
Great. Good to know. So someone might be wondering if, maybe they're thinking about participating in a clinical trial, one that, that we've shared, or another one, or perhaps they're already enrolled in a clinical trial. Would that disqualify them from participating in the community registry?
Yeah. Oh, another good question, Jennifer. So the community registry does not exclude participants who are already participating in a clinical trial. So we're observational in nature. And so any of your other research studies that you may be interested in participate does not prevent you from being in the community registry. Many clinical trials also allow you to participate in other observational studies. Again, we're not dictating anything with your care or your treatment plan. And so we're really just doing observational work. But it's always good to check in with your doctor if you are participating in a trial to make sure that there's no confusion. But the community registry is observation in nature, and we want to collect that information. In fact, we actually ask if you're participating in a clinical trial.
Great. That's terrific. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time today. And to all of our speakers, really great information and about important and timely research. So again, we'll be sharing these presentations again on our YouTube channel. And I do want to plug that our live conference, the PFF Summit, will be held this year in November 13th through the 15th in Chicago. So save the date if you're able to make it. And if you attend that, you'll have the opportunity to participate in our live session of the Clinical Trial Innovation Lunchtime Series. Series, as well as meet researchers, clinicians, and all the other PF community members that will be at that meeting. So save the date, November 13th through the 15th in Chicago. And with that, I'll thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of your day.